Hello there, dear listener. We hope you're enjoying this lovely discussion. If you're not already aware, this show is part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio. A Pan-African Nationalist and Garvey network comes to showcasing the rich and varied thoughts of African people. We have an exciting lineup of shows that we think you'll enjoy, including
the Victor Maxton Podcast.
I think black people require too much buy-in. Like, we constantly have to sell black people on things that are beneficial to black people.
The Pro-Black Perspective Podcast.
I'm fearful that our people are not really studying how to get ahead, and we're kind of, continually staying by.
The Harsh Reality Podcast.
It don't matter. I think people so dumbed down, it wouldn't matter what you review to them. They still are in the matrix. They're in a simulation. They're going to keep doing what they did in the limits. So it really don't matter.
The Learning Curve Podcast.
Sexual access has never given you economic empowerment. The only person who has ever been economically empowered by a sexual relationship is the wasp and his woman.
The Cathedral Cheek Show.
When we start rising up to fight for our own, I guarantee you they'll stop doing what they're doing. I guarantee you they would have let their brother go. They just waited to see what black folks was going to do.
From the Bakari Podcast.
Ashamed of who they really are.
The Forecast Radio.
Like, if you pray to a same deity as, like, your enemy, and that God blesses your enemy more than you may want to reconsider who you pray to,
And Tanzan, African Mind.
Because generally a welcoming of everyone, sometimes to my consternation, I think that they should be less, welcoming.
If you love our podcast network, we would be grateful if you could rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on social media, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out our website at www.kwazradio.com for more information. Thank you for tuning in. And now, back to the program.
All that matters is matter. 21 choices for better life, wealth, and health.
Yeah, so that was actually that all that matters is the book. Make sure you guys download it. Leave some commentary. Let me know what you think. I slowed down a little bit on writing it, but only because I got some other stuff to do. Like I said, sometimes you have to focus on what's important, and of course, writing a book is important. The preview is actually pretty sufficient for its purposes, but I want people to realize this. There's two things you want to do. The first two things you want to do, and I got to this point where I'm just like, the first two things you want to do is get a family and get a house. Okay? If you don't have your family together, if you don't have your house together, that's what you need to be working on. You know what I mean? A lot of us tend to think, no, I got to get this done, I got to get that done. Get your house, get your family. And so a part of what I'm trying to do in Tanzania is, of course, family building, but also house building. So, sometimes I might, because like I said, I'm writing this book and I'm telling you guys, like one of the chapters is get your house together. We're talking about materialism or something, and it's there are 4 materials you need to work on. That is your house, your shop, your storehouse, and your school. Okay? You should have those 4 things. But the first most important thing there is your house. And that's what I'm really trying to get while I'm here in Tanzania. You know what I mean? And the thing about houses is that when you're getting a house, you need a family. You know what I mean? Now, technically, you should have a house before you have a family, or I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to say which is technically. I honestly think you should get a family before you get a house. You know? You should... Yeah, because, like, if you get a house... Like, you get, like, a 4-bedroom house, and you only got one person, it's like, come on. You know? But anyway, it's not too important. That's what I've been doing in Tanzania, and I'm going to try to brief you guys next week. But for this week, we're just going to try to do something quick and short. And this is Garvey's Forerunners, Love and Bedward, right? So, Robert Love's influence. So Marcus Garvey was born 22 years after the 1865 Morant Bay Rebellion. The conditions which spawned that rebellion and the several hundred peasant martyrs still continued, but the fighting spirit of the people had taken a beating after the suppression of the rebellion. British imperialism was, at the end of the 19th century, in its heyday. After the 1880s, the partitioning of Africa among the capitalist powers of Europe had been completed, and Britain had secured a huge slice of the continental cake. It is this experience which led the anti-colonial fighter, Dr. Robert Love, to write, "Africa has been the carcass upon which the vultures of Europe have descended, and which they have sought to partition among themselves, without any regard whatever for the rights of the Africans." Now again, I want people to realize you don't have any rights. You know, and this is why I talk about materialism. When you talk about the materialist view, I don't even entertain the rights conversation. Now, the rights conversation comes about with, I mean, I don't know where, I mean, it comes about with England, ironically, and, you know, France and America. But I think England had some old nonsense. You know, blah, blah, blah. Don't even worry about that. Don't think that anybody owes you any rights. You know what I mean? If a bigger person wants to slap you in the face until you cry and then continue slapping you, the only thing stopping them is power. And hopefully it's your power, but oftentimes it's not even your power. And if it's not your power, that's where you're in a... I mean, if it's not your power or your people's power or your tribe's power, that's where you have power. I'll tell y'all this fact. When I'm in Africa, like I said, sometimes my son be doing some messed up stuff. You know, not some messed up stuff, but like, you know, just reckless. Like maybe he almost trips into a ditch, right? Not paying attention. So then, I think one time, I told you guys before, this was last year, I was like, slap on the hand. Don't do that. Pay attention. Focus. All eyes on me. Like, if this guy slaps his kid one more time, we're going to slap him. You understand? That's what I mean by your power. Because on the flip side, if somebody's slapping their kid in front of me, I'm now empowered to slap them up. It's not the same as in the West. So in the West, you know, we say all this stuff, oh man, you know, back in the day, we could have slapped our kid. No, you couldn't. Back in the day, we could have intervened, but now the mothers are telling us that we're not our kids. That's not even the case, because if you watch, that's why you got to remember movies. If you watch this movie, I can't remember what it was called, like Heyday or School Days, or not School Days, the Brooklyn one, or She's Gotta Have It, but one of those movies from that director. He has this scene where this woman or this guy saves this kid who's running in the street, and he lectures him or whatever, and the mother says, "Do not talk to my child. Don't grab him." And she's like, "No, I was just saving him." He's like, "I don't give a shit. Do not talk to my child." And it's like, that was 20, 30 years ago. So if that was 20, 30 years ago, and you're 20, 30 years old right now, how in the world did you experience that as a kid? How in the world did you get it back in the day? And I'm not saying that, you know, obviously that it was universal back then. I'm just pointing out that, you know, like there was a shift that was shifted. You see what I'm saying? I don't want to sound like one of them, you know, whatever. But right, let's go going. So, but like again, nobody has rights. We got to get that out of us. But Garvey was later to acknowledge that much of my early education in race consciousness is from Dr. Love. One cannot read his Jamaican Advocate without getting race consciousness. If Dr. Love was alive and in robust health, you would not be attacking me, you would be attacking him. Discussions of Love's work in Jamaica is important to show that anti-colonial politics was alive and that black spokesmen such as Love set an example for Garvey. There's a direct line in post-emancipation to black political struggle from George William Gordon and Paul Bogle to Bedward, the evangelical leader, and to the secular spokesman, Dr. Robert Love. This, of course, reflects the progressive movement in Jamaican politics, which Garvey's works continued. So Paul Bogle is one of the Jamaica's national heroes. So Jamaica has 3 national heroes. Queen Nanny, who I would say is one of my ancestors. Paul Bogle. Ironically, I knew somebody who was a descendant of Paul Bogle, and Marcus Garvey. Those are the three like national heroes of Jamaica. It's pretty cool. Love was born in Nassau, the Bahamas. Oh, cool, Bahamas. In 1835 and died in Jamaica in 1914. As a young man, he emigrated to the United States where he studied the Episcopalian priesthood and worked as a clergyman in the South. Love then turned to medicine, and by the end of the 1870s, he had completed his course at the University of Buffalo. He then traveled to Haiti in 1880, where he was employed by the Haitian government as an army doctor before settling in Jamaica in 1889. Love emerged as the most prominent radical figure in Jamaican politics at the turn of the century, and his activities were often the subject for memos and dispatches from concerned colonial officials to the British colonial secretary. So this guy is like a true Pan-Africanist. You know what I mean? Born in the Bahamas, goes to America, works in the South, finishes his studies in the North, right? This is New York, goes to Haiti as a doctor, right? Then he settles in Jamaica and does some radical politics to the peasantry. The chairman of the People's Convention was Alexander Dixon, who in 1899 won a seat to the executive. He said should put themselves up for election, including Alexander Dixon. Love argued that these black men can no longer hide themselves without being guilty of treason to the best interests of their race, to the hopes which the race has right to entertain them. Furthermore, he pointed out, and see, this is a thing I want to point out. So there's this passage by W.B. Du Bois who says the trouble of the 20th century, I think, right, is that men don't know men, that people do not know great people around them. But see, this is what you use journalism for. One, he's advocating for black men to stand up. But two, he's promoting black people. That's what you have to do. You have to use your voice to promote black people. If you're not promoting black people, what are you doing? And this is what, you know, shout out to my brother Bakari. But this is what my brother Bakari sometimes says, you know, where he's like, we put each other down too much. You know? Now, we put each other down too much. You know? And again, and I think this is another trouble too. We tend to big up dead people. People who cannot lead. Oh man, Malcolm X, blah blah blah. You listen to the latest James Wilson, blah blah blah. You know, Marcus Garvey, blah blah blah. You know, this is me reading Marcus Garvey right now. You know, Alexander Dixon, blah blah blah. That's fine, right? But who are the people alive right now? So y'all could hear my content, and I'm talking about, first off, I'm talking about the other people on the podcast. Like I just said, I just mentioned Brother Bakari. Of course, I shout out Kofi. Of course, I talk about Revolutionary Matron. Of course, I talk about my brother from Organic African Paradigm, right? Of course, I talk about my brother Eli, right? I talk about Kamji Verse. I talk about Asar Motep. You know, even though Kaji Verse and Asar Motep are disagreeing, still talk about that. I talk about Brother Buana, you know, Brother Bakari, Forecast, you know, the whole radio, Harsh Reality, all that. Consider Cheeks. You know, you gotta start talking, saying the names of people, getting together, working with people. Because if you're not doing that, right? If you're not doing that, what are you doing? You got to start talking about who you should put up for election, who you should put up for selection, who you should put up inside of different occupations. But that's another thing that we're not really taking seriously. Getting ourselves into leadership positions. You know, I'll say this: Robert Love, he was put up in the leadership position in Jamaica, which was then a colony. Okay, so Jamaica was a colony, so it really wasn't our legislature to get into. But even so, at least he did that. What are we doing? You know, but I'm a continue reading. You know, let no man allow any man to deceive him by saying that there is no class feeling against him. That is a falsehood. He must therefore work out for himself and have nothing to do with that man. Let the Negro look around them in their own parish for a representative Negro, gather around him, help him, send him to the legislative council. See what I'm saying? And this is the genius of some of our ancestors. Like we look at the wrong parts. We look at this, oh, I got rights. Oh yeah, you know, Dr. Love said we got rights. You don't have rights. Don't worry about that. What you do have is a need for leadership. What you do have is leadership positions and people that you need to fill into that leadership position. And if you don't fill people into your leadership positions, then guess what? You're going to be misled. If the best people are not in the, if good, Realm the Bush, see, I told y'all, consider cheeks here. Realm the Bush says exactly. B1. You know? But that's what I'm saying. You gotta big up people. You know, you have a educational program you need. You know, you call up Revolutionary Matron. You call up Consider Cheeks. You know? You call up both of them. And if one of them says, hey, I'm not available, you made 2 phone calls. That's the whole point. You know, you see what Robert Love did? They said Alexander Dixon got elected won the seat to the Legislative Council. But Robert Love, recommended several people. See, he listed several black men whom he said should put themselves up for election, including Alexander Dixon. Okay? So it's like, you know, and that's how life is. You don't, you know, you get a list. Like, do you even have a list of black people who are good at science, who are good at engineering, who are good at medicine, who are good at, do you have that list? Because I can tell you this, I can tell you straight up, white folk got that list for their own people. If you ask a white man, hey, are there any good physicists among you? He will show you a damn list. And it will be names. It won't be it won't be dead people. You know, Albert Einstein, Nikola Tesla. It won't be that. It'll be people you never heard of. But they know them. Reminds me of this one time, this white woman, I think. Yeah, this white woman said, I just got into NASA, F you, B words or whatever. And this guy comes out of nowhere and says, careful with your language. And she says, shut up, eat my, you know, whatever. Right? And he says, lady, do you not recognize my name? You know, I'm the chairman of NASA's this, blah, 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 blah. And the people are like, oh, shit, that's that guy. Like, white people know they're astronauts or they're astronomers or they're whatever, they're physicists. We don't. You asked me to name 10 black physicists, and I'm including myself. And I'm saying physics. I'm not even saying astrophysics. But you asked me to name 10 black physicists, I cannot. Now, there is a National Assembly, there's a National Association for Black Physicists or National Association for Black Astronomers and so forth. But I do want you to recognize that if you don't have at least one list, right? And I'm not saying every black person should have one list. I'm saying you should, because you are the leader. Like our people need to be led. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're one of 6 people listening to this podcast. You are in the leadership role. Like the other people are watching the game, or they you know, they're banging their tambourine. You know what I mean? Right now, actually, I should tell y'all, it's actually 6:00 for me. Yeah, 6:40. So I'm not, you know, church is over. But I heard the tambourines. You know, y'all starting the tambourines now. They're done. Thanks, appreciation to Realm of the Bush. He says, great conversation, brother. Appreciation. You know, but this is what I'm saying. Sometimes our ancestors give us things, and we have to just focus on what are the main, like we have to focus on what is the real tangible things that they're giving us. You know, telling us that they've denied our rights. These white people don't care, but telling us, hey, look, put your leaders forward. That's what we need to do. But we're going to continue reading because we're trying to be quick. This was also Garvey's perspective, not only for Jamaica, but for the English-speaking Caribbean, which was then under colonial rule. In Love's writings, as well as in Garvey's, race consciousness is used in its positive sense. Race consciousness was an anti-colonial concept. It asserted the humanity of a race of people, regardless of class, whom capitalism oppressed and exploited and branded inferior. In this context, racial oppression and class representation stemmed from the same source. Therefore, race consciousness in Love and in Garvey was very often both a national cry of a people and also a class cry. But the latter was not the cry of one class, but of several classes linked by a common yoke of suffering. Now, again, this person's going to insert their socialism, which is all right, whatever. You know, like that's what you're supposed to do. At the end of the day, if you have an ideology, express it. You know what I mean? Like Consider Chief comes aside, and y'all see, she doesn't just say greetings. She says B1. Hey, B1 family. That's it. You know, like sometimes you got to do that. You know, like when I do that same thing when somebody sneezes, I say a BB for Hodie. You know, the Christians, they say bless you. You know, because they're trying to put their religion everywhere. I say a BB for Hodie, which means African liberation, because I'm trying to put my ideology everywhere. You know, so even the socialists, like sometimes you got to just learn. You just got to open your eyes and learn from everybody. You learn from the Christians. You know how they say bless you whenever. Well, they don't say bless you. They say God bless you. Right? They insert their religion everywhere. You gotta insert your B1, just like how Constituent Chiefs came inside. That's how you gotta do it. Or even Revolutionary Matrix. What kind of hearts did she put in? Red, black, green. You know what I mean? Coffee telling us greetings, which is cool too. Again, and that's what I'm saying. Greetings is just polite, and that's good too. But like, you always have to represent your flag, represent your colors, represent your people, all the time. Don't turn it off. I'm just kind of mad. I'm going to tell y'all guys real talk. I'm a little mad. So here in Jamaica, not Jamaica, Tanzania, everybody call me Rastafarian. You know what I'm saying? Oh, Rastafarian. They can't speak English too well. I mean, some people can. Well, they can't speak English, but everybody call me Rastafarian. That's like shit. And it don't help me. It's not helpful, because like I stand out like a sore thumb here. But at least it got me out of one trouble. One guy was trying to sell me some some pork, and I was like, Rastaman, I eat pork, But I'm not a Rasta. All right. So Love's electoral struggles were bitterly opposed by whites and mulattoes. Most of the black population was disenfranchised, but Love obviously intended to make use of certain limited reforms that had been introduced in 1895. In that year, the number of elected members was raised from 9 to 14, and the franchise had been extended by lowering the property qualifications and removing the literacy restrictions. Voter registration consequently rose from 2,000 in 1884 to 43,000 in 1894 to 95. As a result, Love was elected to the Kingston City Council in 1898 and to the Legislative Council in 1906. In these bodies, he continued to defend the oppressed colonial population. And you see that they had 2,000 people voting in 1884 in Jamaica, and 43,000 in 1894. And one thing I want you guys to realize, so I think I put it in my last book, the Book of Power, but the U.S., the British intelligence and the U.S. intelligence were saying that Garvey could have taken over Liberia, okay? Because when there's only 2,000 voters, if you can get to 1,000 voters, right, you can get your policy forward. Like if 1,000 voters are pro UNIA, you could get 1,000. That's easier than to get through. Like if you get, like I said, half of 2,000 is 1,000. That's easier to get 1,000 people on your side than 22,000 or whatever, right? And so because Garvey was like this magnetic speaker, he could have succeeded in Liberia, and that's something that people don't really talk about. But anyway, let's keep going. Love was an advocate of land reform. He agitated for the distribution of crown lands to the landless peasantry on terms which would bring their possessions within the reach of all. He called for the abolition of certain landholding taxes, which severely affected the peasantry, and also for a stop to the heavily subsidized importation of East Indian labor, introduced largely to depress wages and to coerce black labor into accepting the conditions of plantation toil. As one scholar has written, many whites believe that the plantation was a vital agency for civilizing the black masses and ought to be kept alive, irrespective of economic considerations. This was, of course, a racial justification for the plantation system. In the Jamaica Advocate, the plantation system was described as a profit-making institution that kept the laborers dependent, poor, ignorant, unclean, contemptible, and miserable. Love's newspaper also served the migrant laborers in South and Central America, exposing the injustice meted out to them, which in several cases was particularly outrageous. Love's work therefore naturally brought him into conflict with the planters and the colonial rulers in Kingston and London. I can say this though, I think my grandfather in Jamaica ended up becoming like a migrant worker in South or Central America. So it's a really harsh reality right now. But it's really like the past is really something that we have to take account for. Yeah, I think I had this video. I don't know if I put it up online yet, but I was gonna upload a video where I was like, and next time somebody call me Rasta, I'm gonna break out singing some Bob Marley. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, so Love concerned himself with an aspect of colonial life. In The Advocate, he exposed police brutality. And you see, he says police brutality. I actually just saw this video on YouTube. So this black man, I don't know what's going on, but he decides to fight 2 female cops, right? He's swinging on one of them, kind of wrestling one of them. The other one comes up from behind him, pulls out her gun, shoots him in the back, end of fight. And she's like, oh shit, I shot him in the back. And then there's a video of this white guy saying, be careful around female cops because they will accidentally pull out their gun and shoot you. Or quote unquote accidentally pull out their gun and shoot you. They will accidentally mistake their guns for a taser. Mistake their gun for a taser. and basically calling cap on thing. And this is a white guy calling cap, so like trust and believe that these motherfuckers will do what they're doing, right? I just opened my door. I should have done that. So I opened my door thinking, let me see if there. But basically, I have this expensive ass computer in my hand. It's like, wait a second, I shouldn't have done that. All right, so Love concerned himself with all aspects of colonial life, and I'll tell you guys. So how expensive? So the computer is not expensive in American terms, but like I'm in a room that costs 15,000 shillings. Okay, so 15,000 shillings is about $6.50. Okay, so the computer is worth $500. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't. I'm traveling a little bit. That's all. So Love concerned himself with all aspects of colonial life. In The Advocate, he exposed police brutality. See what I'm saying? Called for the appointment of black school inspectors and generally the integration of qualified blacks into the colonial bureaucracy. He also discussed health, education, and the question of black women and their role in society. About black women, Love wrote, "The destiny of the Negro race depends upon the elevation of the women of the race," and added that the conditions in which the black people of BWI, British race, that no effort has been made to lift the black woman up and to put her on the plane that women ought to occupy in society. Of course, the conditions of black people were due to more profound social, economic, and political reasons, but the fact of Love's attention to the role of black women in the struggle is itself an achievement. So, I mean, I don't mind the socialists doing that. Of course it's more, that's okay, because it's like, no effort has been made to lift the black woman up. Yeah. But again, like, you're in a colony. The British West Indies, you're in a colony. Of course they're not trying to lift you up. They're not trying to lift the black woman up. They're not trying to lift the black man up. Nobody was going to lift us up but ourselves. Role of black women in the struggle is itself an achievement. Much in the rural town of Phyllis Wheatley. Oh, on Phyllis Wheatley, the African poetess. Oh, I love Phyllis Wheatley. This was done in aid of the contemplated establishment of a high school for girls to be named after Phyllis Wheatley. Love was well known for his public lectures. So that's what I'm saying. You have to have your own schools, and you don't even need a school per se as much as you need public lectures. As much as you need a lecture hall, right? You need a lecture hall, and it should serve double up as a school. Because that's the thing you got to realize about Christians, right? Like I said, you learn from everybody. Christians, everywhere they go, have lecture halls and schools. You see what I'm saying? Christians do this, Jews do this, Muslims do this. Everywhere they go, everywhere they settle, they have lecture halls and schools. And so the only question is, do you have an ideology that's deserving of a lecture hall in a school? Because when you go into Africa, like I was driving through some remote village. Like, you guys should have seen how many freaking bananas I passed by. I think I uploaded the video, but like so many bananas. But after you pass all those bananas, you then come across a church. And there's like, what was it, like I want to say 50 people, right, in the whole village, and like 30 of them were dancing to church music. But that's what the and it's like an isolated place. But that's what the Christians do, and you gotta just peep game and say, you know what? I think it's an African American saying, "What's good for the goose is good for the gander." Actually, I don't know if it's African American, but I know it's from America. But it's like, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If it's working for Christians, if it's working for Jews, if it's working for Muslims, if it's working for anybody, any group, then yeah, take what you can. Take what you can. Reverend Bush says, we'll mistake guns for tasers, and they get 2 years or no time for murdering you. For murdering you. I look like that brother got paralyzed. I don't know. But they were like, it's an accidental discharge. Pulls out a freaking firearm on his back. I Am African says, just saw the video with the bananas. Yeah, I got so many videos. Oh man, I tell you, because at one point we see this whole tea leaf plantation, right? They call it plantation, but there's just a bunch of tea leaves, and you got to say to yourself, these people, whoever owns that, which could be African, it could be, it could be an African, most likely an African. Whoever owns that got money, and it's like that's where we have to be. That's why I tell you, I'm loving my time in Africa. I'm just mad that I have to return to America at some point, and I might return when it's damn cold, and that's a problem. But because I really should have left a little later, but like I said, I got some family drama, and so I was just trying to because you never know how this family drama is going to turn out. I'll tell you guys, basically, you want custody of your kid. You know what I mean? But you don't know how that's going to turn out because, you don't know how the law is going to be. You know what I mean? Because the law usually, like, I don't want to say too much because, like I said, you never know if it's my son's mother's listening, and then, like, I hurt my own case. You know what I mean? But one time she told me that some of her peoples listens to me and then report back to her. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if it's true or not, but she says basically one time she said, like how you were safe in Tanzania when that lady came to your house. And I'm like, how does she know that? You know what I'm saying? Like, how you know a lady came to my house? Because I put that video up for you guys, but like, you know what I mean? I didn't tell her some lady came to my house, so that was a little creepy, honestly. And it actually urged me to, sue for custody because it's just like, nah, you can't be you can't be doing that. But anyway, but what I'm saying is that, yeah. So because I have this, this court, and all that kind of stuff, I was like, let me go to Africa now, just in case this thing goes bad, and then later I can't even take my son. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you got to just do, But I'm glad I did. Yona B. Oh, shout out to Yona B. She said, "Hey, just subscribe to your channel. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys. It's I don't really have too many subscribers, and I appreciate you guys for coming through. And getting my watch numbers up, and all that stuff. Because it's like it's just I appreciate you guys. Like it's 6:40 right now, and I said to myself, you know what? I'm gonna stop what I'm doing here in Tanzania, and I'm gonna do my regular weekly podcast now, and I'm having fun out here. I don't know if you guys can hear my voice, but it was Saturday night last night, and I guess I went a little. I got a little drinks. I haven't drank in so long, but I decided to drink some of the local beer. Pretty fun times. Anyway, all right, sorry. Of significance was his series on the Haitian Evolution in Toussaint Louverture, which was published in The Advocate between July and September 1898, and which created wide public discussion. That's good, Get a newspaper. A newspaper is a school, too. The Haitian Revolution evoked the same response at the time as the Cuban Revolution did, and continues to do among imperial interests and the local ruling class. Now, you see how he interested his socialism? That's okay. And to mark the centenary of the Haitian Revolution, Love warned Haitians against imperialism's several facets. Keep clear of the United States' greed and avoid German brutality. Now, I didn't know the German brutality, but yeah, keep clear of the United States' greed. And that still applies today. In 1896, he suggested that a public memorial be put up to mark the memory of George William Gordon. Love made the suggestion 31 years after Gordon's execution for his links with the 1865 peasant revolt led by Paul Bogle. This at a time when one of the major assumptions of the colonial political system was that the revolt of 1865 would be repeated. The law enforcement agencies, especially the local constabulary force, established 1866 to 1867, and the courts acted on this assumption. Yeah. And see, white people are supposed to be afraid that you're going to chop their heads off, especially when you're the majority. They're supposed to be afraid of you. When white people are not afraid of you, I mean, look, yeah, when white people are not afraid of, or when white people do not, are willing to test you, that's when you got something wrong. You know what I mean? Like I said, I told you guys, I'm a 6 foot, black man, right? 20 pounds? Yeah, 20-pound black man, right? I'm trying to lose that, obviously, but still, 6 foot, 20-pound black man. He's pushing me and all that type of shit. I'm doing something wrong. Especially if he's not big, I'm doing something wrong, or I'm living somewhere wrong. If somebody sees me getting disrespected and I just take it, I'm doing something wrong. Yona B says, "Don't have too much fun." No, you got it. Life is about having as much fun. No, it's not about that, but it's about having fun while you can. Relvin the Bush says, "I'm so jealous you're in the motherland right now." Relvin the Bush. Y'all gotta give Relvin the Bush some credit. This is a good married woman with a mission, and she went to several African countries last year. You know what I mean? I only went to Tanzania. So I mean, you gotta give her credit. She's not jealous. She's living a good life, and she knows it. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But appreciate the sentiment. But Love's influence on Garvey must be seen not only as an introduction to early nationalist politics in Jamaica, but also the Pan-Africanist ideas articulated by Afro-West Indians, Afro-Americans, and African intellectuals. In a very real sense, Love was a Du Bois-type intellectual. In his writing, there are references to the works of Paul Laurence Dunbar. Paul Laurence Dunbar, by the way, if you guys don't know, there's his brother. What's his name? Not John Bruce. I can't remember his name, but there's this Jamaican historian who said Paul Laurence Dunbar was the first great, he says first great Negro poet kind of thing. But I think he means like the first great African American poet. But like basically, this guy was a good poet. And actually, if you're trying to study poetry, you should read his stuff. Like if you're trying to write poetry, you should read his stuff and try to copy it. He's really, really talented, really skilled. And you can read all of his stuff for free online. Like, there's a completed works, probably go to Gutenberg.org, but you could also go to probably any other site. This is a really good poet, somebody that you want people to study. If I'm not mistaken, I think I bought a book for my son to read, but, he's not really into poetry yet. Phyllis Wheatley, if you guys don't know, is, she was somebody who was captured from Africa, and then I guess Quakers maybe, I don't know, tried to prove that Africans were as intelligent as, white folk, and of course they showed that she was more intelligent, but still, but she was a master poet too. She was a master poet too. Booker T. Washington, you guys know. W.B. Du Bois, Alexander Crummell, John Edward Bruce. Some of you might not know him, but he's Bruce Gray. He's also considered one of Garvey's forerunners. And when Garvey first came on the scene, he wasn't really too he was kind of like, what is this guy talking about? Like, what is Garvey talking about? He's just talking. Like, what is this Jamaican guy babbling about? But then, after a while, he was like one of Garvey's biggest advocates. But he was pretty much the black nationalist before Garvey came around, in America, right? So H. Sylvester Williams, J. Albert Thorne, Frederick Douglass, you guys know Frederick Douglass, Edward Blyden. Oh, that's Edward Blyden. He was one of the early Pan-Africans too. And J. Casely Hayford. So you might not know all these people, which is okay, Like I said, I think it's more important for you to know the people active right now. You should know your ancestors, obviously, But it's like I don't fault you if you actually know the people. If you're working with people right now, like I don't fault you for not knowing, Edward Blyden. You know what I mean? Although Ed Blyden's a good guy, but it's like, In fact, it was the partnership of Dr. Love and H. Sylvester Williams which launched a Pan-African Association in Jamaica in April 1901. So the establishment of such an organization was a consequence of the Pan-African Conference held in London on 23rd to 25 July 1900, which was attended by 24 delegates from the Caribbean, United States, and Africa. H. Sylvester Williams, a Trinidad-born barrister who was George Padmore's uncle, so George Padmore's a big one too, became the organizing secretary of the Pan-African Conference and was mainly responsible for convening the meeting. W. Du Bois, who later organized 4 Pan-African Conferences between 1919 and 1927, was the chairman of the Resolutions Committee and also a regional officer for the USA. I'm not really a big fan of Du Bois, you guys know that. But Du Bois, the thing about Du Bois you got to know too is this. So there's this field of study called sociology, and white people, like Wikipedia and them, they credit 3 people with founding census, I think, but he did it for African Americans. It's pretty cool. And actually, there's this article of a couple of his articles are really good, like not his his books per se, but a couple I know they're informative. But here's this article or this thing where he I think he sent out 500 Q&As to different African Americans, African American leaders and so forth, or people in good positions, I guess. And he asked them different questions like, "Do you think we advance? Is there entertainment for the kids? Is there this? Is there that?" And the answers are so interesting. I think at one point I documented a few of them on my website. And, I just kind of gave some commentary to it. But it's just really interesting. Definitely, just read some of your ancestors' works, just read some of it sometimes, Just before, even, yeah, it's sometimes it's once a week at least, just read something. Let's see. Yona B says, Oni, that Wi-Fi is on point. Nice. No, it's not, but all right. This Wi-Fi is trash. Black Indie Dev is here. Oh, man, Black Indie Dev. That's legendary. I appreciate Black Indie Dev. So this Black Indie Dev is making games and also promoting a lot of Black indie developers. I wish I was working on my game more. I'm thinking about doing a text game at this point because, programming is But like, yeah, shout out to Black Indie Dev. That's pretty good. So let's see. Kofi says Afro West Indians is such a silly term. Yeah, Afro West. Like, what are you? Like, what? Like, what? You know, you're not even Indian, but you know, like, you just take up the fact that they called you Indian, or they thought they were in India. Roman the Butcher says, "LOL, I love seeing Black folk travel back to the motherland." Yeah, I mean, we have to. Like the fact that, like, I'm actually at this point mad that we don't enough. You know, I'm actually mad that a lot of my books were written before I went to the continent. You know. And a part of it was because I felt like when I go to the continent, you know, like I wasn't even sure I would be able to, you know, I didn't know what was going to happen. So you just sometimes got to do stuff. But like, yeah, oh man, the motherland is just the best place. Black and Dev says there's a lot of people to remember. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes you got to just go forward and promote your own people. Like, see, that's what Black and Dev does. And that's what we got to shout out. So you shout out Black Indie Dev, but also you got to realize Black Indie Dev is actually promoting people today. He's not just talking about Black indie developers from way back. He's talking about every Black indie developer. He's even showing us people who are making 3D models today. You know, even Black 3D models. Like, even if it's like, you know, that's what it's supposed to be. And I don't know. I don't remember if he made the chair game. But you know, remember that Alabama fight, or not Alabama, wherever that fight was, where the guy had the chair, he was just slapping people with it. I remember Black Indie Dev was showing off a game where somebody was like I think it was throwing chairs at different people. You know, but it's like, you know, like, that's what we need. Like, we need people like that, and that's what I'm saying. Like, sometimes, you know, that's the good work you need to do. And even if you can't quote what Frederick Douglass said, you know, that's fine if you are promoting and working with your own people. You know, that's what it's about, you know? So shout out to Black Indie Dev. He said, yeah, he made the game. So I'm saying, like he went through and made a game about that situation that happened where we were all joking about it. He was like, look, I'm going to make a game about it, you know? And that's what we're supposed to do, because that's what everybody else is doing. Everybody else is doing their own creativity, and very few of us are being creative, so we have to really get behind those of us that are, you know? So everybody's saying hi to each other. He says, I'm trying to pause posting videos and work on the game at the moment. Yeah, like, work on the game, yeah. Work on your games, man. I have to write my book, and like I said, I'm trying to do this family thing. I'm trying to get a house out here in Tanzania. You know, get me a family. And then, I say this: everybody needs to have their own store. I think all of us should have our own stores, you know, and just produce something. Because I tell you guys, I don't know if you guys know this, but one time I had this website a long time ago. It's called African Blood Slippers. It's still up, obviously. And I was, you know, on my website. Some fool came inside talking crap about black women. You know, he came. He said, "I'm working on a game with a raccoon running around eating biscuits." You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about, right? But like, yeah. So I said I was on my website, minding my business. Some fool comes in and talks crap about black women, and I'm like, okay, who is this guy? What is he? Why is he doing this? So I go over to his website, and he's selling a book. Now I'm giving out free articles every week. So before I did before I did YouTube every week, again, I was doing, I think, an article every week or something like that, right? And I'm doing these articles, and they were actually, you know, a lot of times well researched and all that stuff, but I wasn't making any money off of it, you know? And not that I wasn't making any money off of it, I wasn't selling anything. I was just giving information. I was like, oh, look at this Frederick Douglass, you know, speech, or look at this Paul Bogle, you know? I was giving that stuff. And it's like, this guy, he's talking shit about black women, but at least he's selling a book. And it reminds me of this image a long time ago where they had these like Hebrew Israelite guys who were standing up on a corner next to like an Indian guy who was, you know, selling bananas or something. And the thing was like, the Indian guy or whatever was actually participating in commerce while we were just kind of standing up on the corner. And it just reminded me, like, yeah, if you want to tell our people that we can't just consume, like we shouldn't just consume, we should also produce what we consume. We shouldn't just consume, we should also produce, right? Then you have to be productive too. Like, I can't just go to black people and say, you got to be productive, and I don't have any products. I don't provide any services. You know? I can't just tell black people, hey, you need to keep the black dollar in the black community, you know, more than, you know, 2 hours, and then I do not participate in the black economics. You know? So it's like you just even if it's something small, like I said, like for me, I don't even expect to sell. Like I'm gonna try to write some books and try to write some sell some games. But like even if I don't sell books or write, because again, if I'm in Africa, I'm probably not gonna make that much money doing it, right? But even so, you still want to be in your community selling, because at least you're participating and telling people, hey, this is the most important thing to do, to be a productive people, because everyone's gonna see you as a productive person. But anyway, let me see. Yona B says, I agree. We should have our business set up on the motherland, especially if relocating. Yeah, like you're supposed to have your, like you're supposed to always, someone's supposed to always say, okay, like you're supposed to always be selling something, and people are supposed to always try to get your stuff, and because like you're just supposed to do that, and what I would say is this. The people who keep the community alive are the people who are selling things to the community. You know what I mean? Like, unless you're living in the village where you could just, turn around and go to the banana tree. You know what I'm saying? Just go to the banana tree and eat a banana, right? You have to engage in commerce to survive. And so, and again, I mean, obviously I'm just selling books and I'm selling, it reminds me of, but I don't feel too bad about selling books, as opposed to food, right, or clothes or whatever, right? Because I'm reminded of this. Like I saw this white boy's lecture, and I think Black and Dev might like this lecture. But this white boy was saying he just looks at himself as a toy maker. Like he makes these video games that are not that great, but he's making six figures. After 20 years of doing this, because. And he's just saying, I'm just making toys. He's just a toy maker. And that's what these, like, if I make a little adventure book, right? A little short adventure book, it's just a toy for a kid to engage themselves in. That's it. And you could just sell toys. And I'm saying, look, if I was doing a shop, real talk, because I'll be in Africa or something, like I might just do it like 4 hours a week. You know what I'm saying? Like just like on a Monday, or a Tuesday, just open up, lay some books out. And then just, if somebody buys it, somebody doesn't buy it. Like, again, I would hopefully have other ways of surviving. But at the same time, it's like, that's what, like just to be an asset to your community, right? That's what you do as a community. Because I tell you, when I'm here in Tanzania, like, in order for me to eat food, I got to go out to the market and buy it. You know what I mean? I got to go out to the market and buy it. Or go to the restaurants and buy it. And that's the people that are useful to you. The people who are providing services. Matter of fact, I'll tell y'all this, matter of fact. So I walked out, I'm wearing these pants. The belt that I got is too thick, so it couldn't fit in this pants, in the pants holes. So I'm outside. I got my heavy ass wallet, my phones in my pocket. My pants is a little bit, falling over. There's this one guy who was walking around. He was trying to sell a stereo to people, right? Nobody wanted to buy a stereo randomly. But then I see this guy come again, and what does he have in his hand? 2 belts. So this dude, I don't know what he did, but I guess he walked over to the market, bought a belt, probably bought it for like, I don't know, 7,000 shillings. I don't know. Then he comes to me and he says, hey, this belt is for 10,000 shillings, right? And I got the belt. I was like, okay, this is actually a good belt. Put it on, yeah, he made his little profit. Basically delivered me a belt because he saw a need from me and compensated. So it's like, even if you're selling belts, somebody might want a belt. And in fact, I saw a guy walking around with a bunch of locks, like a bunch of padlocks. And I'm like, who wants to buy padlocks off the street? Like, who wants to? But you never know if you're walking around and you just might need a padlock. Some guy, like, I don't understand that hustle, but it is what it is. But anyway, just before the Loves People Convention met in August 1900, the Advocate informed its readers about the London Conference. The brief item read, the Pan-African Conference, composed of black men, is to meet and to deliberate in London during the present month. Its object is to bring before the people and government of Great Britain the circumstances, claims, and desires of the black population incorporated into the British Empire. Now, again, you got to remember, you're in an empire, so it is what it is. Let me see. Okay, the comments go. Black Indian says we need more black folks making games, so that option is there. Yeah, exactly. Like that's what I'm saying. You gotta appreciate Black Indian for that. If you guys aren't subscribed, make sure you guys subscribe. Rebel the Bush says you sell online so you could be in Africa and making money. Exactly. That's really my plan. Because like if you have the technology, you might as well. You know what I mean? Like my plan is to sell the books online because I got the American citizenship. You know what I'm saying? I have the American citizenship. I have the American bank. I could still do that stuff. And in fact, I actually real talk. Well, not some of my money will come from sometimes, occasionally. I could work an online job. You know what I mean? And it's related to like mathematics and stuff like that. So I could do that occasionally. So it's like if I were to do business in Africa, like selling, I wouldn't necessarily do it to like survive. You know what I mean? And that's a quote unquote privilege I have. In fact, I should tell y'all about this sister I just met 2 days ago. This sister was sitting down, like basically we were waiting for a bus to go somewhere, to go to the village and whatever. And we saw this sister. She offered us a seat, and she was just peeling oranges. All she does is peel oranges all day. Sits in the blazing sun, peeling oranges. She's 23 years old, has a 5-year-old kid. So yeah, that's it. That's her life, just peeling oranges. So I said to myself, you know, and so I think I found out. I think she told me this today because we met her again today. She said she sells 150 oranges a day. Right now, she sells these oranges for, if I'm not mistaken, 50 cents. I mean, for 25 cents, so 500 shillings. So I don't know. I didn't do the math. Oh, 150 times 25. I could actually do that. 25 cents because it's 1/4. So actually, she's making a respectable amount of money. Honestly, $37 in Tanzania. That's respectable, right? But even so, and I think she it costs her a certain amount of shillings to buy the oranges, right? So she has to buy the 150 oranges and then sells the 150 oranges. But what I said to myself was, look, I'm gonna give her an extra, $25. You know what I mean? Just because. Black Indie Dev says you check. You know what? I don't got good internet, but I'm gonna check them out. So you guys make sure you check out Black Indie Dev's Black audiobooks. He says he published 2 Black horror audiobooks. Cause see, that's the stuff I need too. So cause that's like I said about you walking around with padlocks. You might think you not know that you might not need things, but like things for my son. You know what I mean? And I know you might say horror books are not good for your son, but it is. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna definitely check that out. But he says we should have business set up. Usually more making games, so the option is there. You sell online so you could be in Africa. You check my Black audiobooks. Yeah, so check out his Black audiobooks. Make sure you guys subscribe. Subscribe to everybody. You know what I mean? Subscribe to everybody. And like promote people too. Like I should know what Yona B's up to. I know what Realm of the Bush is up to because Realm of the Bush is Realm of the Bush. You know what I'm saying? But like I should know. You know what I'm saying? So I could be promoting Yona B, whenever I speak. But yes, that online commerce is sweet for anywhere living. Yep. He says, Black Indian says, why? What part of Africa are you in? Also, is she a single mother? If so, why is she single? So this part of the country, so I'm in Tanzania. This part of the country is, Tanzania is a little different. I ain't gonna hold you guys. So a lot of times we think that America, like African Americans really have the single mother problem. There's a lot of single mothers in Tanzania. But in this part of the country particularly, I don't want to say where I'm at right now, but yeah, there's definitely single mothers. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? But like, why is she single mother? Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like it's not the best thing, but at the end of the day, like that's her life. You know what I mean? Not everybody's gonna have that good, easy life. And like I said, she's out there peeling these potatoes. She's 23. She looks older. Yeah. And that's just like that's life. Like life is. That's why I love traveling. That's why I love traveling because you just get to see people. Like I said, I went to the village, and like it's so different from what you expect. Like it's mostly old people, and really young people. Which is something that I expect on an anthropological level, but like you have to see it to believe it. You know what I mean? Like you have to see it to believe it. So that's just like it's just definitely like if anybody who has never traveled, you got to go. Like, you gotta go. The conference also received the support of another Pan-Africanist figure, J. Albert Thorne, who was, from a political point of view, in the Booker T. Washington mold. Thorne was born in Barbados and taught for many years in Jamaica. He was not a radical, but he had ideas about resettling blacks in Africa. Yeah, shout out. You know what I mean? Shout out. You know? And from Barbados, but he goes to Jamaica, and he's like, guys, let's go back to Africa. And that's the thing that you got to realize about our ancestors. Like, we are repeating them. You know? In March, because the same situation that created their logic is the situation that we're facing. Not exactly the same, but like more or less. And a large part of it is us being in colonial situations, us being in a colonized situation, you know? In March 1901, Sylvester Williams arrived in Jamaica to organize the Pan-African Association. As part of the publicity, the Advocate published documents from the London Conference, including the Address to the Nation of the World, written by Du Bois, which sets out the early progressive ideological orientation of Pan-Africanism. Some success attended the efforts of Sylvester Williams. Within a month, membership in the Jamaica Pan-African Association reached 500, and there were groups in Kingston, Onato Bay, Porus, Port Antonio, Black River, Mandeville, and Yalis in St. Thomas. Love in his newspaper performed a vital role in the development of his short-lived association. The objectives of the Pan-African Association, as set out at the first meeting of the Kingston branch, were to secure for Africans and their descendants throughout the world their civil and political rights, to ameliorate the condition of our oppressed brethren in the continent of Africa, America, and other parts of the world by promoting efforts to secure effective legislation. So again, that's the white boys legislation. That's the problem. To encourage our people in educational, industrial, and commercial enterprises. Again, that's good stuff. To foster friendly relations between the Caucasian and African races. Like, I don't know about that, but that's what I'm saying. You know Du Bois was here. Hey, let's make them be friends. Anyway, that's why you don't invite Du Bois nowhere, you know? But all right. To organize a bureau, because I don't even know if Du Bois was mixed. They said he was. I don't know if he was, but I think he thought he was. You know what I mean? I think he thought he was. And so he's all, let's get these, you know. And I'm not just going to blame him, because I guess they said it was somebody else still, but, you know. To organize a bureau as a depository for collections of authorized productions, writings, and statistics relating to our people everywhere, to raise a fund to be used solely for the forwarding of the above, right? There were, in a sense, modest objectives, but they represent the beginning of the mass anti-colonial torrents of later decades. The governor, St. Augustus Hansard, to raise funds for the association, but he refused, citing 3 reasons. First, he said there was no need for the organization. Secondly, it was aggressive. And thirdly, he would have to submit the matter to Mr. Chamberlain, the Secretary of State for the colonies. Love replied in this very incisive manner, Sir Augustus Hemming, the man sees in the African race a people subject, and simply enough, he refuses to sympathize with it, and he is not to be asked leave of Sir Augustus Hemming in this manner. Right, so you guys see that. Let me see what the comments are. Oh, Black Indian Defense. Yeah, I mean, it was sad. Like I said, I just gave her $25, and I was just like, you know, like try to do something with that. You know what I mean? Back in the day, I used to give more, but you know, money's been. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, when you keep giving out money, you know, it kind of catches up with you. You know what I'm saying? No, actually, I got this. You know, I'm supposed to have some money coming in America, but the people who's to give me the money is kind of thinking this dude's not even in America, so I ain't gonna give him I ain't gonna give him nothing. So it is what it is. But you know, you know, like it is what it is. You know, at the end of the day, just make sure you stay afloat. You know what I mean? Or even this, make sure you stay alive. You know, at the end of the day, just make sure you stay alive. Or you know, or at least if you're going to die, you know, that day, make sure it's for something. You know what I mean? But yeah, as long as I'm living, you know, it is what it is. I'm not going broke or anything. Hemming replied, repeating his position and arguing with crass hypocrisy that in British colonies like Jamaica, there was one law for black and white, and that law is impartially administered without fear, favor, or prejudice. Damn. Love's reply is well worth quoting at length, as, with a touch of his characteristic irony, it cuts through and exposes the class and racial realities that determine how the laws were exercised. But you kind of see that it's like, we were subject, and we call ourselves British subjects. We were called British subjects, but it's like, we still don't, and it's like, I get it. You should fight your subjection, but like, and I think it's more reasonable in Jamaica where you're the majority. You know what I mean? I think it's more reasonable where you're the majority. So there's one law for black employed in Jamaica and elsewhere as a vehicle to convey a false impression as to the prevailing conditions of the various classes, positively and relatively. It has become the stock formula under the plausible sound of which is a subtle deception is veiled. There is one constitutional law for white and black in the United States, yet black citizens of the United States are publicly shot, hanged, and burned at the stake, and thousands are disenfranchised in spite of that one law. The latter of the law and the spirit of the rulers are very different things. His Excellency says in Jamaica there is but one law for black and white, and that law is impartially administered without fear, favor, or prejudice. But in spite of this, we are left to ask, where is the black man whom His Excellency has appointed a member of any public board? Although almost all of the prisoners in the island are black men, where is the black man who has ever appointed on the board of visitors of either the prisons or reformatories? In Jamaica, there is but one law for black and white, and yet that by that very law, the black masses are made to pay more taxes than the white classes. We do not deny that in Jamaica there is one law for black and white, but we do deny that a spirit of impartial justice gives value to that law, and after that latter is the main point. And again, like that's why, you have to decolonize. You have to decolonize. And that for me, that's what we focus on 5 people at the same time. So if you get into a fight with 5 people, the only way you're surviving, a fair fight I'm talking, only way you're surviving is, and not fair fight, but you get what I'm saying, like a fist to fist. And the only way you're surviving is if they let you, But anyway, so that's all I was saying. So I apologize for that. My internet dropped. Wait, do I have internet still? I can't tell if I'm still streaming. Yeah, I think I'm still streaming. But yeah, all right, let me just read it. So it was this very issue of the class and race prejudice judiciary which Garvey was led to 20 years and so forth. Under other circumstances, Love continued to engage the exponents of colonialism and racism. Joseph Chamberlain was reported to have said, as dominant race, if we admitted equality with inferior races, we would lose the power which gave us our dominance. Love's advocate replied fiercely, attacking colonialism. It is with this principle that they vex the Africans with punitive expeditions and destroy the Indians with famine and oppression. It is thus minded that their governor and officials and understrappers come to these isles. But Englishmen will wake up someday to find that they are making a great mistake. Subject races will not always be governed by that spirit. They were not always thus governed. The Indian will someday repel the assumption. The African will do the same thing. The Egyptian, the Burmese, etc. will vindicate their individuality and will prove that temporary dominance is not evidence of constitutional superiority. This light of anti-colonial struggle was directly continued in Garvey's work. Garvey, a legacy of ideas and battle that he could draw on, a platform of views and aspirations to which he could attract a mass base. Love was a fighter, but he was largely alone. He really has no mass following. But of course he had a newspaper though, which is good. West Indians had a paternalistic attitude to Africa. Some had gone via the colonial route to work as teachers, missionaries, and skills craft information from the West Indian colonial press. Newspapers like the Sierra Leone Weekly News, the Lagos Weekly Record, the Lagos Standard, the Lagos Echo, the West African Mail, and the Gold Coast Leader were frequently referred to in the Advocate. There's even reference to the Advocate having a special correspondent in West Africa. So yeah, I mean that's what it is though. Like, and I'm saying like having a paternalistic view is not a bad thing. I mean, obviously you're like, hey, the neglected Africa, we have to enlighten them. At the end of the day, like, if you feel like you have something to teach, you should be paternalistic. You know what I mean? Like, you should feel like you have something to teach. Or if you feel like everything's going right, then that's fine. But if you feel like everything's going right, then then why are you teaching anybody? But anyway, let's keep going. In 1897, The Advocate published a series of articles by Dr. Scholes on European imperialist policy in Africa. Scholes was a Jamaican who authored a number of scholarly books critical of imperial policy and racism. In addition to Scholes, The Advocate reproduced the writings of Dr. Edward Blyden and J.E. Casey Hedford. Indeed, the attitude of The Advocate towards African political development is summed up in the comment, Africa for the Africans is the new shape of an old cry. This cry will awaken the so-called civilized world to a consciousness of the fact that others who are not accounted as civilized think with regard to natural rights. This is civilized people think. So again, I wouldn't think in natural rights. The Advocate also dealt with the struggle by Afro-Americans for civil and political rights against racism. Booker T. Washington was at the time the acknowledged leader of the Afro-American population. Love described him as the Negro apostle of industrial education for the African race. The Advocate, 1903, published this comprehensive report of the 12th Tuskegee Conference, and between November and December of 1901, a series of articles also appeared on the race question in the United States, which dealt at length with Washington's activities. However, Love was critical of Washington's apparent acquiescence to the racism of American South. Indeed, Love paid more attention to the more radical Afro-Americans like John Henry Bruce, told you guys about him, the radical journalist who later worked for Garvey's Negro World newspaper. Love, in an attack on American racism, quoted extensively from Bruce's protest pamphlet, Blood Red Record, dealing with the lynchings and burnings of blacks in the United States. These are some of the political positions adopted by Love, which made him significant in any study of Garvey's early life and work. Clearly, Garvey had been privileged to hear Love lecture, no doubt, especially around the period of 1906 election, and he was certainly a reader of The Advocate. As a matter of fact, one of Garvey's co-workers at the government printing office, Kingston, Enos J. Soli, knew Love personally and slowly not only traveled to Costa Rica when Garvey went there around 1910, but was to be one of the founding members of the UNIA. That's pretty cool. All right. So now we're going to go to Bedwardism and, try to wrap this up while we still have internet, right? Socio-religious ferment, Bedwardism. So while Dr. Robert Love represented the secular form of anti-colonialism, there was also the religious form which manifested itself, especially in Bedwardism. Throbbing at the head of Bedwardism was the restless frustration of the downtrodden and displaced peasant masses who looked to God for salvation and saw Bedward as representative in Jamaica. Bedwardism took the name of its founder, Alexander Bedward, a native Baptist preacher who had been a cooper on Mona Estate, St. Andrew, and in Panama. The native Baptist, what do you mean native? What does that mean? Native Baptist movement of Bedward. Wait, where is Bedward from? Bedward goes back to the peasant activity of the 1840s, which culminated in the Great Revival of the 1860s to 61 and the Morant Bay Rebellion in 1865. During the 1880s in the parish of Hanover, there had also been another significant revivalist movement. The crucial years of Bedwardism were from the 1890s to the 1920s. Bedward was well aware of the historical tradition of peasant struggle from which he emerged. He in fact identified himself with Paul Bogle, a fact which set the stage for a repeat of the Morant Bay repression that followed. Bedward was reported to have proclaimed, "There is a white wall and a black wall, and the white wall has been closing around the black wall, but now the black wall has become bigger than the white wall. Let them remember the Morant War." Characteristically speaking, in parables, as so many Jamaicans working people do, Bedward was challenging the colonial state. This was a seditious statement defiantly uttered in the tradition of Paul Bogle, which bore testimony to the fact that the black militancy and rebellious spirit of elements among the downtrodden peasantry had not been snuffed out in 1865. The colonial officials had not forgotten how Bogle had ordered the black constables sent out to arrest him to join their own color and cleave to the black. Bedward was too ominous a reminder of Bogle and the Morant War to be left alone. Contemporary white Jamaican police inspector Thomas wrote in his memoirs, "It should always be borne in mind that although under normal conditions there is no racial animosity in evidence, any riot which is not promptly and ruthlessly suppressed at once tends to develop into a race war, or rather, I should say a class war. For the people of mixed race and even the well-to-do Negroes themselves would in such an event fare no better at the hands of the mobs, consisting as it does of the lowest and most dangerous elements of the population, than the Bukra, who sit at the top of the social scale." So they said, look, they got the well-to-do, black folk, and they got the mixed folk, So he's like, it's a class war. It's like, but of course, is it? Thomas realized that the threat from the lowest as being the most dangerous, and that such a threat had to be ruthlessly suppressed. Thomas' position was a norm of ruling class sentiment in the colonies. Beneath the whites were the people of mixed race and the well-to-do Negroes, who were often more vitriolic in their hostility to radicalism than the whites. This difference was not because the latter were more disposed to the blacks than mulattoes or middle-class blacks, but rather it was prudent for others to do their dirty work, and it was a role that the colonial-minded middle sector could be relied on to carry out. The elements represented... let me see what the comments are. Oh, we got no... That's all right. It's good stuff. The elements represented in Love was Bedouism attracted the most oppressed sections of the poor peasantry and semi-proletarian masses, out of which Rastafarianism later came. Love reflected the middle peasantry, the better-off blacks, whose advance in all areas, professional, mercantile, social, cultural, and political, faced the stone wall of colonial racism. The source of disaffection which fed Bedouism was the bitter struggle waged by the plantocracy and the colonial government to continue the enslavement of the peasants to the estates. As Dr. T.E.S. Scholes, in a contemporary analysis of the late 19th century, points out, estates, the sugar interest pursued the policy of withholding its land from the portion of the community. Evidence of this process is seen in the fact that between 1894 and 1901, 128,000 acres of land had been reverted to the Crown. By 1912, this figure reached 240,000 368 acres. The situation primarily affected the poorest peasants. They faced intensified impoverishment and demoralization and sought outlets by leaving for other plantations in the Americas or abandoning the countryside to settle in Kingston and St. Andrews. This rural-urban drift was certainly one of the streams feeding the rise of Bedouinism during the 1890s. The followers of Bedouinism found an outlet in religion. The followers of love, for their part, were spokesmen for their class and sought to develop a political movement with an anti-colonial platform. From the standpoint of colonial and racial oppression, the two streams needed to be brought together into a mightier force. The possibility for this were not realized in Love's time, and when Garvey attempted it, severe strains were imposed by the strength of the colonial system itself and the inconsistency of the middle-class blacks, especially those influenced by colonial values and pressures, because the little they had acquired in property and social standing they did not want to lose. Bedward, like Garvey, meaning that Bedouinism, with all its religious mysticism, was also a form of nationalism, was recognized by his contemporaries, as evidenced in his dispatch by the correspondent to the weekly newspaper, Jamaica Times. For it, if the Neds of church and state take up the uncompromising position, Negro inferiority ever and Negro progress never, then what Du Bois, the educated American Negro teacher, and Booker T. Washington and Frederick Douglass and Dr. Love strive for will come not by the peaceful wand of the schoolmaster, but by the juggernaut car of strife. Juggernaut car of strife? I don't know. Therefore, I conclude that Bedouinism is a manger of black ideals from which will spring the menace of black progress. Alexander Bedward was a target for the colonial authorities because he was a religious leader of the masses who, in his church and on the banks of the Augusttown River, preached against British colonialism. On 21st January 1891, Bedward was arrested and charged with sedition. He spent 4 months in jails before being summoned for trial. He was judged insane. Bedward nevertheless continued his religious work. He was finally put into a mental asylum after an attempted protest march on Kingston in 1921, when 685 of his followers were arrested and 208 convicted. See what I'm saying? They could just put you in an insane asylum. Like, that's the freedom you have. Like, they could just put you in an insane asylum. That march included casual laborers, cultivators, carpenters, wharf laborers, butlers, and shoemakers. From this social class came, in fact, a number of Bedwardites who were drawn to Garveyism or who retained dual allegiance. Just one example of the latter tendency was Roman Henry of Augusttown, who was active in both the Bedwardite and Garveyite movement at the same time. Garvey himself realized the link between his work and Bedward's when he publicly stated in 1927 that the colonial authorities would have a hard time putting him in the asylum as they had done with poor Bedward. The colonial authorities were supported by the Daily Gleaner, which waged a journalistic battle against Bedwardism, maligning the religious practice of the group and calling constantly for their repression. During the early... And again, you see, Garvey just points out a contemporary. You don't have to say that the guy was a forerunner. He's a contemporary. Like I said, we have so many good scholars today, but we just don't even talk about them. And that's where it's a problem. Or like I said, we have the KWZ Radio Network. Check us out. Just listen to us. We're here. You know what I mean? There's people here that you just and you got to promote people. Like I said, I'm about to check out Black Indie Dev, the horror books. All right, let's keep going. So it said the colonial authorities were supported by the Daily Gleaner, which waged a journalistic battle against Bedwardism, maligning the religious practice of the group and calling constantly for their repression. During the early 1890s, Joshua de Cordova, proprietor of the Daily Gleaner, described his newspaper's policy towards Bedouinism in the following way. The Gleaner set itself by reporting and sarcasm to kill the folly and ridicule it out of existence. This was, however, not the truth. Sarcasm and ridicule were minor aspects of broader policy. In 1921, official policy was to destroy Bedouinism by force. The determination to crush Bedouinism is clearly evidenced in the instructions from the governor, Sir Leslie Probyn, to resident magistrate Sam C. Burke to prearrange the charges under which Bedward would be arrested on the day in April he and his followers attempted to march from their Augusttown camp in Kingston. Plans were also made and effected by the police to ambush the march at Matilda's Corner. Many of Bedward's followers were subsequently arrested and sentenced to hard labor on trumped-up charges. The Gleaner argued that But I think, actually, if you look at my homepage, I think I have everybody's network on there. But yeah, just check out, subscribe, and join. And the thing about a lot of us is that, especially them, they open up the floor. You know what I mean? So you could just jump on and just converse with some really intelligent people, like videos, like the videos you ain't ever even heard of, like some woman, apparently some white, like a black woman was just in a car, and then a white woman pulls up and shoots her, you know, and then she survives, and later on she's like, I forgive this white woman. And you're like, what? Like, I ain't never even seen a video like that. Like, how do you forgive somebody for just rolling down your window, like, walking up to your car window and shooting you, But it is what it is. He says, let me know what you think. Oh, about the stuff? Yeah, of course. No doubt. Like I said, my thing is to give my son, because like I said, like this guy has this lecture. I think you can see it on my Discord. But this guy has this lecture where he's like, he's just a toy maker. And at the end of the day, like, some people do need toys. Like, kids, give the kids toys. So like me, it's like an audiobook would be a toy for my son. You know what I mean? So that's what it is. Just have him listening, because that's the thing that I want him to do.